Hello, I'm John and welcome to my Booktube channel, Disquiet and Dragons. I'm new to Booktube, so I'm a bit nervous and I thought I'd do the Booktube Newbie tag. So I've got my notes and I'll get on with the first question. Why did you start this channel? Like pretty much all the other new booktubers, it's to start a discussion and have conversations about books. Some of my friends are readers, the majority of them aren't, so I don't really get to talk about books as much as I'd like to, which is a shame, but hopefully I'll meet some friends on here and we'll get to talk about books. What are some fun and unique things you can bring to Booktube? Like everyone, the unique thing is your personality and yourself. Hopefully I'll find people on here that I get on with well. That'd be really cool. And the other thing, I don't want this channel to be focusing on negative things. I prefer to talk about positive things, about books I enjoyed rather than books I didn't enjoy. What are you most excited about with this channel? Very similar to the first question. I'm looking forward to meeting new people, talking about books, people maybe recommending books to me to read and finding that new amazing book. There's nothing better than either getting a recommendation from somebody or recommending a book to somebody and finding out that they loved it. I just think that's a really cool thing with Booktube. Why do you love reading? Again, it's a pretty similar answer to a lot of other people. It's just that feeling of being transported to different worlds, of escapism, of having somebody else's imagination and having them describe what they're thinking and being able to experience it in the same way that they do. And also reading, I love the actual act of going book shopping. I absolutely love it, just browsing bookshops and browsing the charity shops and finding that, you know, that little treasure that you're after for your collection. I just think that's a brilliant feeling. What book or series got you into reading? The first series I can remember reading was, if you're from the UK, you'll know these. The Little Mr. Men books when I was about 4 or 5. I used to have most of them. As I grew a bit older, I remember The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe was one of my favourite books. I absolutely loved that book. Then I moved on to you might remember them, the fighting fantasy books written by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone. I remember having a lot of those when I was about 10, 11 years old. I used to read them all the time. As I got older, I kind of stopped reading quite as much, and the book that got me back into reading again was A Song of Ice and Fire. I've never really been a big fantasy reader until recently, but my friend came round and said, "Oh, have you watched Game of Thrones?" And I hadn't even heard I didn't even know what it was. So we watched the first episode and I absolutely loved it. And he's like, "Oh, it's a book series as well." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So the next day I went to, I think it was W.H. Smith's, and I bought the book. I read it in a couple of days, absolutely loved it. And before the second season had finished, I'd actually read all the books that had come out. So yeah, that was the one that got me back into reading, really. When did you start reading? Again, very similar to the last question. As far as I can remember, it was when I was about 4 or 5. I know I was really young. I had the Mr. Men books, and like a lot of kids in the early 80s, I was obsessed with dinosaurs, and I've actually got one of the first books I ever had, and how many I've read this book. I must have read this book 100 times, and I still read it now every so often. But yeah, very young when I started reading, and yeah, I feel very happy that I started reading at such a young age. What question would you ask your favourite booktubers? I'm really lucky in that I've actually become good friends with one of my favourite booktubers, Ellie at Bibbidi Bobbidi Books. And when I thought about starting a YouTube channel, I did kind of bombard her with questions like, what kind of camera do you use, and where do you find out about all the new books that are coming out? So I'm really lucky that my favourite booktuber, I'm able to talk to her, and I do ask her the occasional question. You should definitely follow her as well. I'll put her channel link in the description. Her channel is wonderful and well worth subscribing to. What challenges do you think starting a YouTube channel will be the hardest to overcome? I've got a couple. I think nervousness of talking to a camera will be the main one, but I think in time I'll get used to that and I'll be able to overcome that one. The second one is learning how to edit, and just the whole process of making a YouTube video. It's all very new to me, and I'm sure in time it will come, but I'm a bit nervous about all that. But I'm sure in time I'll be able to edit and all that kind of thing. Where do you read? I read mostly at home. I've got a comfy armchair, and when it's cold or raining outside, I don't think there's anything better than getting cozy under your blanket, cup of coffee and a good book. Just can't beat it. But most of my reading is done at home in the front room. What kind of books do you like to read? My first love for reading is horror. I absolutely adore horror. It doesn't scare me as much as horror movies do, but they creep me out, but they don't scare me as much. So if anyone has got a recommendation for a truly terrifying book, horror novel, please put it in the comments. I'd love a book to scare me. The other kinds of book, I've grown to love fantasy. I've been reading fantasy for a couple of years now. I'm starting with some of the classics. I've recently started reading Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I'm about 3 books into the Witcher series. So I've got lots and lots of really good fantasy to look forward to. I've also recently started getting into science fiction, which I'm really enjoying as well. I've recently started reading historical fiction. I really like Bernard Cromwell, what I've read of him so far, and I've recently bought The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett, and it's a chunky book, but I'm looking forward to reading that one. I do also read quite a lot of non-fiction. I like reading books on the supernatural, the paranormal, folklore, Viking mythology. I've got quite a few books on witchcraft and paganism. I enjoy books in that kind of category. Bonus question: what are you currently reading? I'm currently reading Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames, and it is just a fantastic book. It's really fast paced. The characters are like so lovable, and even the baddies are enjoyable. They're like real pantomime villains. If you like rock or metal, you'll really appreciate some of the references in it. On the first page, there's a couple. The main character is named after a pretty famous singer, I think. I think his name is Clay Cooper. I think it's after Alice Cooper. But there's lots of little references. It's well worth reading, even if you don't like rock or fantasy and you just want a fast-paced, well-written fantasy novel. You can't beat it. Well, that's all the questions answered for the Booktube Newbie tag. Thank you ever so much for watching. I'm hoping that in future my videos will get better when I get better at editing and all that kind of thing, the technological side. I'd like to thank you for watching, taking the time to watch my video. If you would like to subscribe, that would be amazing. And I'd love it if you commented in the comment section and if we had a conversation about books. All the best. Take care. Goodbye.